simple thing. We are all gathered here together, Mr. Tushman continued, taking off his glasses and using them to point at all of us in the audience, all your families, friends and teachers, to celebrate not only your achievements of this past year, Beecher Middle Schoolers, but your endless possibilities. When you reflect on this past year, I want you all to look at where you are now and where you've been. You've all gotten a little taller, a little stronger, a little smarter, I hope. Here some people in the audience chuckled. But the best way to measure how much you've grown isn't by inches or the number of laps you can now run around the track, or even your average grade point. Those things are important, of course, but it's what you've done with your time, how you've chosen to spend your days, and who you've touched this year. That, to me, is the greatest measure of success. There's a wonderful line in a book by J.M. Barrie, and no, it's not Peter Pan, and I'm not going to ask you to clap if you believe in fairies. Here, everyone laughed again. But in another book by J.M. Barrie, called The Little White Bird, he writes, he started flipping through a small book on the podium until he found the page he was looking for, and then he put on his reading glasses. Shall we make a new rule of life, always to try to be a little kinder than is necessary? Here Mr. Tushman looked up at the audience. Kinder than is necessary, he repeated. What a marvellous line, isn't it? Kinder than is necessary. Because it's not enough to be kind. One should be kinder than needed. Why I love that line, that idea, is that it reminds me that we carry with us as human beings not just the capacity to be kind, but the very choice of kindness. And what does that mean? How is that measured? You can't use a meter stick. It's like I was saying just before. It's not like measuring how much you've grown in a year. It's not exactly quantifiable, is it? How do we know we've been kind? What is being kind anyway? He put on his reading glasses again and started flipping through another small book. There's another passage in a different book I'd like to share with you, he said. If you'll bear with me while I find it. Here we go. In Under the Eye of the Clock by Christopher Nolan, the main character is a young man who is facing some extraordinary challenges. There is one part where someone helps him, a kid in his class. On the surface, it's a small gesture, but to this young man, whose name is Joseph, it's, well, if you permit me. He cleared his throat and read from the book. It was at moments such as these that Joseph recognised the face of God in human form. It glimmered in their kindness to him. It glowed in their keenness. It hinted in their caring. Indeed, it caressed in their gaze. He paused and took off his reading glasses again. It glimmered in their kindness to him, he repeated, smiling. Such a simple thing, kindness. Such a simple thing. A nice word of encouragement given when needed, an act of friendship, a passing smile. He closed the book, put it down, and leaned forward on the podium. Children, what I want to impart to you today is an understanding of the value of that simple thing called kindness. And that's all I leave you with today. I know I'm known for my endless speeches. But what I do want you, my students, to take away from your middle school experience, he continued, is the sure knowledge that in the future you make for yourselves, anything is possible. If every single person in this room made it a rule that wherever you are, whenever you can, you will try to act a little kinder than is necessary, then the world will really be a better place. And if you do this, if you act just a little kinder than is necessary, someone else, somewhere, someday may recognise you, in every single one of you, the face of God. He paused and shrugged. Or whatever other politically correct spiritual representation of universal goodness you may happen to believe in, he added, smiling, which got lots of laughs and lots of applause from the crowds, especially from the back of the auditorium where the parents were sitting. Awards. I liked Mr. Tushman's speech, but I have to admit I kind of zoned out a little during some of the other speeches. I tuned in again when Miss Rubin started reading off the names of the kids who'd made the high school high honour roll, because we were supposed to stand up when our names were called. So I waited and listened for my name as she went down the list alphabetically. Reed Kingsley, Maya Markovitz, August Pullman. I stood up. Then she finished reading off the names. After that, she asked us all to face the audience and take a bow, and everyone applauded. I had no idea where in that huge crowd my parents might be sitting. All I could see were the flashes of light from people taking photos and parents waving at their kids. I pictured Mum waving at me from somewhere even though I couldn't see her. Then Mr Tushman came back to the podium to present the medals for academic excellence, and Jack was right. Shamina Shin won the gold medal for overall academic excellence in the 5th grade. Charlotte won the silver. Charlotte also won a gold medal for music. Amos won the medal for overall excellence in sports, which I was really happy about because ever since the residential, I'd considered Amos to be one of my best friends in school. But I was really thrilled when Mr Tushman called out Summer's name for the gold medal in creative writing. I saw Summer put a hand over her mouth when her name was called, and when she walked up onto the stage I yelled, "Woohoo, Summer!" as loudly as I could, though I don't think she heard me. After the last name was called, all the kids who'd just won awards stood next to each other on stage, and Mr Tushman said to the audience, "Ladies and gentlemen, I am very honoured to present to you this year's Beecher Prep School Scholastic Achievers. Congratulations to all of you." I applauded as the kids on stage bowed. I was so happy for Summer. "The final award this morning," said Mr Tushman, after the kids on stage had returned to their seats, "is the Henry Ward Beecher Medal to honour students who have been notable or exemplary in certain areas throughout the school year. Typically, this medal has been our way of acknowledging volunteerism or service to the school." I immediately figured that Charlotte would get this medal because she'd organised the coat drive this year, so I kind of zoned out a bit again. I looked at my watch, 10:56. I was getting hungry for lunch already. Henry Ward Beecher was, of course, the 19th century abolitionist, a fiery sermoniser for human rights, after whom this school was named, Mr Tushman was saying when I started paying attention again. While reading up on his life in preparation for this award, I came upon a passage that he wrote that seemed particularly consistent with the themes I touched on earlier. Themes I've been talking about all year long. Not just the nature of kindness, but the nature of one person's kindness, the power of one's friendship, the test of one's character, the strength of one's courage and bravery. And here the weirdest thing happened. Mr Tushman's voice cracked a bit, like he got all choked up and was about to cry. He actually cleared his throat and took a big sip of water. I started paying attention, for real now, to what he was saying. "The strength of one's courage," he repeated quietly, nodding and smiling. He held up his right hand like he was counting off. Courage, kindness, friendship, character. These are the qualities that define us as human beings, that propel us, on occasion, to greatness. And this is what the Henry Ward Beecher Medal is about, recognising greatness. But how do we do that? How do we measure something like greatness? Again, there's no meter stick for that kind of thing. How do we even define it? Well, Beecher actually had an answer for that. He put his reading glasses on again, leafed through the book and started to read. "Greatness," wrote Beecher, "lies not in being strong, but in the right using of strength. He is the greatest whose strength carries up the most hearts." And again, out the blue, he got all choked up. He put his 2 index fingers over his mouth for a second before continuing. "He is the greatest," he finally continued, "whose strength carries up the most hearts by the attraction of his own. Without further ado, this year I am very proud to award the Henry Ward Beecher Medal to the student whose quiet strength has carried up the most hearts. So, will August Pullman please come up here to receive this award?" Floating. People started applauding before Mr Tushman's words actually registered in my brain. I heard Maya, who was next to me, give a happy little scream when she heard my name, and Miles, who was on the other side of me, patted my back. "Stand up, get up," said all the kids around me urgently, and I felt lots of hands pushing me upwards out of my seat, guiding me to the edge of the row, patting my back, high-fiving me. "Way to go, Oggy! Nice going, Oggy!" I even started hearing my name being chanted, "Oggy, Oggy." I looked back and saw Jack leading the chant, fist in the air, smiling and signalling for me to keep going, and Amos shouting through his hands, "Woohoo! Go, dude!" Then I saw Summer smiling as I walked past her row, and when she saw me look at her, she gave me a secret little thumbs up and mouthed a silent, "Cool beans" to me. I laughed and shook my head like I couldn't believe it, because I really couldn't believe it. I think I was smiling, maybe I was beaming, I don't know. As I walked up the aisle towards the stage, all I saw was a blur of happy, bright faces looking at me, and hands clapping for me. And I heard people yelling things out at me. "You deserve it, Oggy! Good for you, Oggy!" I saw all my teachers in the aisle seats, Mr Brown and Miss Miss Petosa and Mr. Roach and Mrs. Antabay and Nurse Molly and all the others, and they were cheering for me, woohooing and whistling. I felt like I was floating. It was so weird, like the sun was shining full force on my face and the wind was blowing. As I got closer to the stage, I saw Miss Rubin waving at me in the front row. And then next to her was Mrs. G, who was crying hysterically, a happy crying, smiling sort of cry, and clapping the whole time. And as I walked up the steps to the stage, the most amazing thing happened. Everyone started standing up, not just the front rows, but the whole audience suddenly got up on their feet, whooping, hollering, clapping like crazy. It was a standing ovation for me. I walked across the stage to Mr. Tushman, who shook my hand with both his hands and whispered in my ear, "Well done, Oggy." Then he placed the gold medal over my head, just like they do in the Olympics, and had me turn to face the audience. I felt like I was watching myself in a movie, almost, like I was someone else. It was like that last scene in Star Wars, A New Hope, when Luke Skywalker, Han Solo and Chewbacca are being applauded for destroying the Death Star. I could almost hear the Star Wars theme music playing in my head as I stood on the stage. I wasn't even sure why I was getting this medal, really. No, that's not true. I did know why. It's like people you see sometimes and you can't imagine what it would be like to be that other person, whether it's somebody in a wheelchair or somebody who can't talk. Only I know that I'm that person to other people, maybe every single person in that whole auditorium. To me though, I'm just me, an ordinary kid. But hey, if they want to give me a medal for being me, that's okay. I'll take it. I didn't destroy Death Star or anything like that, but I did just get through 5th grade, and that's not easy, even if you're not me. Pictures. Afterwards, there was a reception for the 5th and 6th graders under a huge white tent in the back of the school. All the kids found their parents, and I didn't mind at all when Mum and Dad hugged me like crazy, or when Via wrapped her arms around me and swung me left and right about 20 times. Then Papa and Tata hugged me, and Aunt Kate and Uncle Poe and Uncle Ben, every kind of teary-eyed. Everyone was kind of teary-eyed and wet-cheeked. But Miranda was the funniest. She was crying more than anyone and squeezed me so tight that Via had to practically pry her off me, which made them both laugh. Everyone started taking pictures of me and pulling out their flips, and then Dad got me and Summer and Jack together for a group shot. We put our arms around each other's shoulders, and for the first time I could remember, I wasn't even thinking about my face. I was just smiling a big fat happy smile for all the different cameras clicking away at me. Flash, flash, click, click, smiling away at Jack's parents and Summer's mum, who then started clicking. Then Reed and Maya came over, flash, flash, click, click. And then Charlotte came over and asked if she could take a picture with us, and we were like, sure, of course. And then Charlotte's parents were snapping away at our little group along with everyone else's parents. And the next thing I knew, the 2 Maxes had come over, and Henry and Miles and Savannah. Then Amos came over, and Shmina. And we were all in this big tight huddle as parents clicked away like we were on some kind of red carpet. Luca, Isaiah, Nino, Pablo, Tristan, Ellie. I lost track of who else came over. Everybody practically. All I knew for sure is that we were all laughing and squeezing in tight against each other, and no one seemed to care if it was my face that was next to theirs or not. In fact, and I don't mean to brag here, but it kind of felt like everyone wanted to get close to me. The walk home. We walked to our house for cake and ice cream after the reception. Jack and his parents and his little brother Jamie, Summer and her mother, Uncle Poe and Aunt Kate, Uncle Ben, Tata and Papa, Justin and Via and Miranda, Mum and Dad. It was one of those great June days when the sky is completely blue and the sun is shining, but it isn't so hot that you wish you were on a beach instead. It was just the perfect day. Everyone was happy, I still felt like I was floating, and the Star Wars hero music was still spinning round my head. I walked with Summer and Jack, and we just couldn't stop cracking up. Everything made us laugh. We were in that giggly kind of mood when all someone has to do is look at you and you start laughing again. I heard Dad's voice up ahead and looked up. He was telling everyone a funny story as they walked down Armster Avenue. The grown-ups were all laughing too. Mum always did say that Dad could be a comedian. I noticed Mum wasn't walking with the group of grown-ups, so I looked behind me. She was hanging back a bit, smiling to herself, like she was thinking of something nice. She seemed happy. I took a few steps back and surprised her by hugging her as she walked. She put her arm round me and gave me a squeeze. "Thank you for making me go to school," I said, quietly. She hugged me close and leaned down and kissed the top of my head. "Thank you, Oggy," she answered back. "For what?" "For everything you've given us," she said. "For coming into our lives, for being you." She bent down and whispered in my ear, "You really are a wonder, Oggy. You are."